Greetings, everyone. A day in the life of an incarnate death being. Me. What does it mean to be a being of death? And I also specifically mentioned incarnate. So, like every human on the planet, we all come from different places. We all speak different languages. We all look different. We have different cultures, etc. Different ways of doing things. And in similar fashion, the beings of eternity are the same. It happens that my soul's essence is of death. So therefore, I am incarnate death. There are many different kinds of death beings. And of course, there are the first death beings. That would be me. I am one of the first death beings. Which basically means that with that knowing, I'm at the end of a soul life cycle. And that means that after this physical experience is at an end, I transition into eternity, meaning death. I know, right? Being death and then death. I know, it's so death. It's very goth if you think of it. I then will have different kinds of experiences in eternity, as every soul does within the soul experience. And every soul experience is unique. So what does it mean? Well, I already covered that. I meant to say, a day in the life of a death being, what to expect, how do you communicate with other death beings, etc. There's so many ways to get into it, so I figured I would name a few things as to what it's actually like to but like, what is it like to work with other beings within the realm of death? Okay, well, for starters, you're constantly connected to everything and anything that has to do with death, whether it means changes, loss, grief, a lot of love, friendship, laughter, and this might also seem a bit like friendship, love, laughter. Well, first and foremost, when I'm speaking about, maybe I should clarify this. When I say that my essence is of death, I specifically am connected to a very wonderful being, and his name is Sariel. Some of you may know Sariel as the Angel of Death. So I've been working with Sariel since I was a wee thing, and Sariel and I have a very unique relationship. We are what is considered twins. So when I say twins, the word twins is unique, and the closest way, and he also will say this, is that to be a twin cosmically is the same as having a human twin. And this is true. So there are times in communicating with him that I don't really have to say anything to explain. He does like to hear from me specifically as to what I'm talking about. However, he knows, and the same with myself with how he engages within his day-to-day. Now, he has a very unique way of experiencing his eternity and how he works with other people. It is really fascinating, it is really complex, and it's a lifelong, for myself, right now, a lifelong experience to be able to work with him. So I wanted to introduce a few things of, like, for myself, what it's actually like. So as I did mention a few things as, like, the love and the friendship and loss, etc. My life is not, like, full of doom and dread. No. There's a lot of spirit communication. So my household is completely surrounded by very specific beings and guardians that work with death and are, I want to say, iconography. However, if you were to see them, there's a lot of wolves. So the wolf is a part of the complex cosmic death. So there are a lot of wolves. And when I say wolves, they don't look like your wolf that you would see in the world. They look a little different. So if some of you are familiar with the Egyptian god Anubis has a very unique appearance. He's anthropomorphic, and I'm using him as an example because, yes, I do work with Anubis as well. He's wonderful. Some of the beings do look similar to Anubis, not exactly like Anubis. Complex death is complex completely. There's no one way to fully understand the being. The being is multifaceted, as all people are multifaceted. It's complex. It's a lifelong experience to work with them. And so let me just throw a few other things because I feel like I'm getting off topic. For example, sometimes if I'm trying to just live and experience my day, I'll have a dead person poke their heads in. So I am a very careful lady, and I set up my space very specifically to avoid any just like random dead Joe walking into my space. I went camping with my friend recently. Well, it's winter right now. When I say recently, I mean a few months ago. Before the winter. It was like before fall. It's like right at the beginning of fall. And on the first night, it happened. Dead person comes into the tent. And mind you, I had my own tent. My friend was next door in her own tent. She had no idea what was going on. Dead person pokes their head into the tent. I had another being with me in the tent that was kind of like my lookout. And immediately the lookout was like, WTF, and then Asriel poked his head in from the other side, so here you have dead guy, and then here you have Asriel, and when Asriel, and then I'm here, like a mummy, and then my lookout was also like a mummy. You have dead person, then Asriel, and Asriel was like, no, not right now, go. And they were just being nosy. And that honestly is very typical of interacting with the beings of death. Now, there may be people out there who identify and do work in mediumship and are psychic, and there may be people also who are learning the abilities to connect. Understandable. So some of this may seem a bit familiar. However, for those of you who have that calling, and you know this, to connect with the dead, this is familiar to you, and it's a very unique way to work with spirit. I have worked with the dead many times, and being of death, the dead are synonymous. They're going to be there. I'm not disturbed by them. I'm not weirded out by them. I'm respectful of them. I do engage with them when I need to, not whenever, because I have to live a life, and I can't have 50,000 dead all over me because it's too much. I'm busy. I'm busy. This is why Azrael is eternal, so he can deal with it. There are times they're just nosy. So basically, when an event occurred, Azrael said to me, well, you're like a glow-in-the-dark, because I have like, back in the day, like in the 90s, they had like the glow-in-the-dark stars and things. I still have them. And Azrael said to me, well, you're basically like the glow-in-the-dark stars and moon and stuff. You just stand out, and they're nosy. They just want to see you. And I understand. And also, like, I'm trying to sleep. Go. So that's pretty typical. The other part of it would be, let's say I'm driving, like minding my business, and then you hit a wall. No, I didn't drive into a wall. Goodness. No, I'm minding my business, and all of a sudden, psychically, you're hit with a wall, and you're like, what the hell was that? And you see things. You have vision. You have intensity. And because, again, my essence is death, you see a lot of death things. I love how I just like wipe my hand like through the camera. So I've seen anything from, this can get a bit bleak, please excuse me. It comes with a package of death. You see a lot of death. You see a lot of trauma and grief, and that it does stay in the location of where it occurred. So sometimes this can be in neighborhoods. They're fine. And when I say they're fine, I mean that there's nothing on the outside that looks like anything happened. Everything looks peaceful, and then you're seeing something else. And then you do research, right? Because I'm like, what happened here? So I'm like clicking away on my computer, and lo and behold, you research, and there's like events that occurred there, and you're like, well, that makes sense. It doesn't matter where you're at. Death always shows up. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Death shows up. It doesn't matter how old or how new a building is. It don't matter. What matters is that you acknowledge, like for myself, understanding what I am. And when you understand what you are and what role you fit in that, then you're going to see things. Yeah. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else. But basically this, you're honestly just like cutting it down. You're haunted. You're haunted. And some things that others might find, well, that's weird, is like, that's common. So if you say like slithery girl on the ground and like going up a wall, you're like, well, okay. you might see things that, like, doesn't that belong, like, in a story? You know, like, creature things? Like, that looks like a fantasy thing. Like a dragon. And you're like, what? And then it's there. And it's like, wow. I will say this. I have had other people that I've had privilege to know that have seen the things I've seen. And when other people have those experiences that you're having, I will say they are validating. However, it's really fascinating too how other people who don't have, because you also have like clear sight. I have clear sight. When other people don't have that psychic sight and they're not noticing it, and sometimes spirit knows that. Sometimes spirit is like will put on a show for you. And there are times where it doesn't matter where I'm at. Of course, I'm gonna be around people, other people, and not all the people that I know are like me, and that's fine. That's fine. We can't all be that awesome. No, I'm joking. Like, seriously, like, a lot of people that I know just are not, like, they're interested in the topics. They're interested in my experiences. However, they're not tuned in the way I'm tuned in. Like, tune in, y'all, because... And then I just burst out laughing. So I look out of my mind. So I could be in the grocery store, and I'll just start laughing. And I'm like, stop. Please stop. Because I can hear them too, and I can see them, and sometimes they do things that are hilarious. So I'm being a wee bit vague, but aside from like the beings of death that I work with, such as Sariel and the beautiful god Anubis, there are so many others, and there's so many others too that are not specifically known as beings of death. However, they do have death duties, and I've had opportunity to work with them. So I'm Alma Star. I'm an artist and channel. I channel spirit. I specifically work with the beings of death. If you're interested in anything that I've said, or find my really creepy Jim Morrison poster that I've had since I was like 11, it's fuzzy. Stay tuned and hang around, and then you can see my very creepy, I don't know what to do with my finger, a very creepy great-great-grandfather. Met him. There's no way I should have met him, right? That's what happens when, like, you know, you can communicate from the beyond to the beyond. When the beyond honestly just feels like you're opening up a door. Like, I'm gonna go into the kitchen, so I have to open the door to go through the hall. And there's Grandpa. Anyway, thank you, and I'll see you soon. Sausage, this is salsa, dude. Dúsela.